adjust my screen here, make sure everything is looking good. Let me know in the chat if the audio sounds good, if the visual is good, if there's any technical issues like that. Okay, so yeah, right before I started this class, I was all good to go, and then my son woke up my daughter, and my husband's watching them, and it just got real crazy right before I pressed start. So if you hear a lot of background noise, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so today we're going to be painting lavender, and my calendar is telling me today's the first day of summer. I thought it was tomorrow, but I think it's today. So lavender feels like a perfect first day of summer tutorial. I have this painting I did a couple years back. We'll kind of use that as like a rough template. I also have these from our garden, which I'll probably be referencing as far as color goes. These ones are a little bit dried out, but they're so pretty. I love them. So I'm just going to have these kind of off to the side. I'll probably put them right here on my palette. And let's see here. Let me get a little bit closer to my paper. As close a shot as I can get is probably the most helpful way to do this. I'm going to use just a regular click pencil to, roughly kind of sketch out composition here. And so let's get started here. So we're going to do 2 branches. So one will be, just trying to keep your arm really relaxed here. So we'll do one kind of going this way, and then one just behind it. And then we'll just kind of go ahead and draw out some lines for some leaves. Try and keep all these really relaxed too. And then as far as the actual flowers themselves, kind of think like, let's kind of draw these little just dashes. Kind of along those lines in just a few places. So at the bottom of lavender, you'll see they're a little bit more spaced out, and then as it gets closer to the top, they become a little bit closer together. This one's so dried out. It's been like in a bouquet in my kitchen for like 2 weeks. Okay, so just draw a few little clusters. And this is something I feel like pretty confident to just draw with paint. I don't feel like I need a really detailed pencil sketch here, but we'll just make sure that it's just kind of roughly there. I'm trying to think more about the composition and the way it fills the paper. By the way, this paper I believe is about 6 by 8, but use any size you have is totally fine. You can use a large paper, small paper. Smaller is always a little easier, especially if you're kind of new to watercolors. I find that it's just a little bit easier to get started with a smaller paper. Okay, so that's good, and I'm going to use a size 6 brush here. This is a Rosemary & Co. brush I just got, and I really love this brush. So this is actually, and it's a sable blend brush, so it's not fully sable and it's not fully synthetic. It has a little bit of both. So the sable holds a ton of water, and the synthetic, I think it just kind of gives it a nice snap. It makes it a lot cheaper, the fact that it's partly synthetic. And yeah, it's been a good brush. Hold on real quick drink of coffee. I have not been getting enough sleep lately. We've got our daughter is teething, and it's been going on for like, I think about 2 weeks. So most nights I'm awake at least like, a couple hours in the middle of the night, and last night was no exception. So I feel kind of out of it today. So if I mix up words, you know why. So I'm going to get started by mixing some purple. We'll get a couple mixes going here. So I've got some blue here, some blue here. I can see that I've got some gouache on top of it as well. So I'm going to try and kind of clear that off. So I've got some, let's see, that's cerulean blue and cobalt blue. Use whatever blue you have. It's going to be beautiful. You don't have to use the exact same colors as me. Getting hung up on paint colors, I have found very recently, I've recently had the revelation that getting caught up in paint colors is it's a distraction. Just use the colors you have and paint. I find that myself, I can get really caught up in paint supplies and feel like that's going to be what's going to take me to the next level or whatever. It's just supplies, and it's kind of rarely true. The thing that's really going to take you to the next place is practice, and that's what we're all doing today, isn't it? So, okay, so I have some paint here called Lavender. I'm going to go ahead and mix that in there. That's kind of perfect, isn't it? Lavender color paint. I just told you don't get too caught up on paint supplies, but I will say if you don't have this color, this is a really fun one to experiment with. I actually just got it a couple weeks ago, and I have been just like going back to old paintings of like, this needs some lavender, putting lavender on it. So I love this color. It's beautiful. It's very opaque, so it's a very thick color. And so it'll cover up white pretty significantly. So it's not a transparent watercolor. It's actually kind of works more like a gouache. Okay, so I got those ones. Let's do something with this. So I'm going to mix some blue, a little bit of this lavender color. Use whatever purples you've got. And I'm going to kind of start up here at the top. And the name of the game here is we want to kind of try and vary our colors just a little bit. So we don't want it all to be just like one flat purple. But I am going to do my first pass with I'll just do this one color. So it's kind of a mix of the bluish purple color here. Grab maybe a tiny bit of blue, drop it in there and let it kind of bleed together. Let that water kind of do its thing. I feel like mine is looking a little bit uniform. So I'm gonna just try and add a couple little dashes to just make it feel like every section isn't the exact same stamp, if that makes sense. We want it to feel natural, kind of true to what we might see in life. Okay. So, as I mentioned, they're going to start to kind of space out just a tiny bit more as we move downward. So just these little dashes kind of going to the left and the right, and then up and down. I'm squinting at it really quick, seeing if there's anything I want to add here. Just going to add a tiny bit more of this lavender color. If you don't have purple, which I'm sure most of you do, but if you don't have purple, you can just grab some pink and blue, and that will make a beautiful purple for you, or red and blue. And you'll find that, depending on which colors you mix together, you're going to have a lot of different interesting combos. So color mixing is always a really fun way to get to some new colors you might have not, come to just if you used paint just straight from the tube. I'm going to grab a little bit more blue. I think I want a little bit more depth. I'm going to grab actually some alizarin crimson, just a tiny bit of pink. And it's just going to add like a punch to it, just to make it just a tiny bit darker. And I'll just go ahead and drop it in a few places here. Kind of create some shadows, just some darker values. Just in a few places, kind of here, maybe at the top of some of these tiny little lavender, I guess they're buds, little tiny lavender buds. Okay, so that's good there. I'm gonna move over to this one now. So this is certainly a different color than my reference. My reference is definitely more of a true purple. This one is more of a blue, which is actually what I'm seeing when I look at these lavender stems here off to my side. I see that it is more blue. So I'm going with what's in front of me here. And let's do the same thing. So just draw these little delicate little wispies. It's a fun flower to paint. I feel like this is a really great kind of beginner. Yeah, it's a great beginner flower. Not too much going on, not too many details, but you know, all these little tiny brush strokes can make for a very interesting painting, which I love. So I'm grabbing a tiny bit of more blue, kind of adding some blue to the tips like I did over there. Just gonna kind of squint at this for a moment. See how far down the stems I want to move. I think I'll do one more right here. And adding that dark blue in there as well. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit more of that alizarin crimson, so that pink color, adding it here, so it's going to create more of a dark purple color for me. And I'll go ahead and add that in a few places there, just a tiny bit. I'm going to clean my brush off. So I just have a damp brush here, and I'm just going to use this water to just kind of feather out a few little moments here. Keep it all kind of soft and watery looking. Maybe a little bit right here. And what that's doing is just taking a tiny bit of paint that's on the surface of my paper, and it's just kind of very, very gently dispersing and kind of feathering that color out a little bit in like just a really soft way. So it helps to kind of make it a little bit more, yeah, just soft, maybe a little bit more, I don't know, impressionistic, I guess, kind of giving it that soft, those soft edges. So you can, you know, go as crazy as you want here. You can keep it really simple. You don't have to overdo it here. Okay, so let that dry. Let's get some greens going. So I will grab the green I have here. I have a very blue green here. So I've got just, since this is a little bit too blue, I'm going to grab a little bit of yellow here. Take it down a bit. So if you're interested, that is raw sienna and viridian. And it's creating kind of this beautiful, earthy, slightly blue-green. So it's an interesting kind of mix. It warmed it up a little bit, but it still has a tiny bit of blue in there, which I love. So I will do, let's see here. Let's go ahead and start down here. So I'll start over here on the left side. We have long, thin leaves for lavender. So use a thin brush here. I'm going to kind of connect my little stems in there. Make sure your paper feels pretty dry when you add that in there. Here, I'm going to give my wrist a little bit more room to work here. Okay, so I didn't perfectly follow my sketch, and that's fine because I'll erase the pencil markings after everything is dried. Oh, I like this one. I like that color of green a lot. Okay, so I am going to let that dry. I'm going to add some depth to my green leaves in a minute. I think what I would like to do is, I mean, this is such a simple tutorial, honestly. It's like, you don't have to do too much more. But if I wanted to add a little more detail, what I would do is, I'm going to grab some more blue, a little bit more pink, or red. So I want dark, 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 dark. I'm going to grab even a little bit of brown. You could add some brown in there. There's a lot of different ways to get to where we want to be here. So I want some warmth, dark purple, some warm purple. So I'm adding a little bit of blue, a little bit of green, a little bit of brown. And I'm going to go easy here. I don't want to overdo this part because I actually love how light and kind of airy and romantic it's feeling. But over here on the right side, I'm going to kind of imagine that my light is kind of coming from this direction. And I'm going to just add in a few places just this little line of like darker, warm purple. And I'm going to do this kind of slowly and methodically. I don't want to overdo it. It's a very subtle effect, and we definitely don't need to do it on every single little bud. I think that would be a little overkill. I'm looking over at my lavender off to the side here, deciding what places it makes the most sense to drop this extra depth in there. I love a new paintbrush because it's just got a really crisp, sharp point. I must have used my brushes because they don't keep that point. I think for most people, if they paint a lot, it's hard, even with like a really nice brush, to keep the point going strong forever. I think unless you take just meticulous care of them, which I don't. I often will just like, if I'm done painting, I just drop it and go about my day. And then when I come back to paint later, I'm like, oh, there's still paint in here. I got to clean it out. Okay. It's looking good. And if you have white paint, which I do here, I have some gouache. If you have white paint, maybe try this with me. Let's see how it turns out. I'm going to mix it in with this purple, this light lavender color. Or I might just, you could just use it straight from, your palette. A lot of watercolor palettes come with white. So I'm just going to drop it in a few places over here on the left side of my composition. So it kind of gives the highlight of like the light hitting the left side, and then I made the right side just a little bit darker in a few places. This is such a simple composition that I'm just kind of like, let's take it to the next level, just a tiny bit. Add a little bit more depth. Okay, all right, let that dry. I'm gonna come back to my leaves here. So I'm gonna get a little bit more dark paint going on. So I'm gonna grab more of this green and I'm gonna grab a little bit more yellow. So it's the same mix, but it's just a little bit heavier. So there's a little bit more paint now. I might lean more towards the green than I did earlier. And let's add some depth here. So kind of following what we did earlier, I'm going to just drop some green on the left side, or on the right side, if that's where the light is kind of, if the light's coming from over here, it would make sense that the right side is just a little bit darker. So adding some depth right there. And then I'm just going to make this leaf, I'll make this one darker. Leave that one as it is. Make this one darker. Again, I need a little bit more room for my wrist here. Go ahead and drop a little bit of paint over on the right side. Make this leaf a little darker. And then how about this one right here? I'm going to add one more tiny little leaf back in here. Something else you could do here is just get a really watery green. It's the same color, and then just dip your brush in water so it's like the lightest green. And if you want to add any more leaves, just add like, you could add like the lightest impression of a leaf back there. Keeps it super soft. I think it feels nice to have the mix of some dark leaves, some really light ones. And I don't want to go too crazy on the leaves. I think that lavender is a very simple, you know, like technically the leaves are typically way down the stem, and it like the shoots, like just like this one. I mean, the leaves are so far down, and then like it has these long stems, and then there's, you know, the lavender part is actually at the top. So this is not exactly 100% scientifically accurate, but that's okay, because it's my painting. So okay, so then once your painting is dry, you can come in and erase some of these little pencil markings. Probably shouldn't do this until I know that it's very dry, but I don't see a ton of pencil markings on mine, so I will leave it just like that. And something I've been getting in the habit of doing lately is grab a pencil, or well, I have my pink one here, and I like to just write the date that it is. Today's the 20th. And yeah, it's going to be really neat to look back years from now and see what I was painting during this season of my life. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you are interested in regular tutorials, be sure to join me on Patreon, because I'm making at least 2 a month over on Patreon. And then, yeah, we do these lives. I try and do them at least once a month. Honestly, I love creating them so much that whenever I do make them, I'm like, I should do these every week. They're so fun. And they're really easy once I'm actually doing it, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of extra thought and coordinating to like make it happen. Just, you know, I'm in a season of life where there's just kind of a lot going on. So anyways, I'm so grateful for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got some good little tips and tricks, and I would love to see what you created from this. Feel free to share that with me either on the chat feature over on Patreon, or you can always just send me a message on Instagram. And yeah, I hope you guys have a beautiful day, a wonderful summer, and I will see you again very soon.